Bill Arrett with Avison Young is going to come and tell you a little bit about the space and the building before we get our panel started.
Good morning, everybody. Applause to Connie for the vision. This is something that she when she started this over a year ago, she talked a lot about this kind of a venue for delivering content to all of us that are related to the real estate industry and development in the community. But it's taken over a year to pull it off, and we're pleased to be that group that could expose vacant space and new opportunity for the business community to be in downtown Indy. So that's my advertisement for the building. And for those of you that don't know, Avison Young is headquartered out of Toronto, Canada. And some of my Lex Indy members are here. We were just in Toronto a little over 2 weeks ago, I think, with the Leadership Exchange group. And that was a fabulous trip to help continue the improvements that are going on in our great city. But Avison Young is a new brand to the market, and it's only been here 6 months. And we are a full-service commercial real estate firm, and that's my advertisement for Avison Young. So enjoy the panel and have a great morning. And then when you're done, make sure you take a quick walk around and take advantage of the views.
Yeah, that's one of the things we want everybody to be sure to do. That's the great thing about having this What's Up Downtown event in this space, because you can walk around and see everything that we're going to be talking about here today. So we're going to get started with our panel. Since we're starting a little bit late, I'm going to let you guys go a little bit late. I'll signal you when to take questions and answers from the audience, and we'll still wrap you guys up. I apologize, but I am going to let each one of these people introduce themselves. We've all been to events where the MC or host tries to read off of cards, and usually they're trying to be a little bit clever and things, and they stumble and bumble, and I save myself that angst and just leave it up to them to introduce themselves. So Lori, we're going to let you start, and then when it comes down to Chris, we'll get the panel discussion started.
Hi, I'm Lori Everett. I'm the president and founder of Hahnemann Design. We create profitable environments as an award-winning interior design and architecture firm, especially specializing in corporate, hospitality, and retail markets. Our office is downtown, just off of College and Mass Ave, and quite a number of our projects are located downtown currently. One of the more recognizable projects we've done is Union 50, which we have some display over there. And also one of the more exciting things we're working on right now is Vita, which is at the old Amici space on New York Street. Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to talking to you all.
Good morning. My name is Brian Gilday, and though my name tag says Indy Chamber, I'm actually no longer with the Chamber, effective 2 weeks ago tomorrow. So I'd like to say I am a free agent, and all opinions represented today are solely mine. But while at the Chamber, I headed up economic development specifically for Marion County, so I've been involved in a lot of the projects and discussions that we'll have today. And as Connie said, though you're not employed there, you haven't forgotten everything that you learned while there as well. So looking forward to contributing as part of this panel.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Steve Alexander with Prince Alexander Architects. I grew up in Kokomo, but in 1978, I started working for Vista Volunteers and became very active in community development. And I lived for 2 years at 30th and Clifton, if anybody knows where 30th and Clifton is. Sherry was with UNWA way back when we were kids. Yeah. So around the state and the second and third tier cities that we do economic development consulting for and community development projects turn into bigger village development kind of things in city centers, and we're doing a lot more of that. Got a lot coming up on the books. Thanks.
I'm Betsy McCaw. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, a full mouthful. And I'm also the president of 16 Tech, which is the innovation community we are hopefully going to launch and build out just north of IUPUI on Indiana Avenue between 10th and 16th. So look forward to chatting about that today.
Good morning. My name is Chris Novotny. I'm with Hayes & Sons. And my role with Hayes & Sons is Director of Business Development, which is generally everything sales, and whatever they can't figure out to give somebody else, it falls under that Director of Business Development role. Simply put, we help people really in their time of need, whether it's a residential or commercial, water loss, fire, mold. That's where we step in. That's where we're good. As I did the research and I listened to these guys in the conference call, and everybody shared amazing stuff that's going on in this city that I had no clue that was happening. And growing up in this city, anybody else who has, in my 36 years, I've really seen this city change. And so I was doing some research to try to kick this off, and I found some nicknames that people have called Indianapolis over the years. We've all heard Naptown, and now it's kind of the urban popular, but it didn't start off as a good term. Indiana No Place. Hillary exposed that one not too long ago. Corn Belt. Hicks. We all remember the Pacers days, the Hicks versus the Knicks. And Peyton's Place. That's what people knew of our city. In looking up Naptown, really the name came from the 1960s when the suburbia blew up and everybody started moving out of the city. And what I'm told is the city actually shut down at 5 p.m. And one year for the lighting of the world's largest Christmas tree, less than 100 people showed up, which I think it attracts over 150,000 people today. And so one of the funny things in the story was pest control, they could literally shoot down pigeons in downtown Indianapolis and not worry about hitting anybody. And so Indianapolis was known as the place that the naps and the place to go to sleep. And what you're going to learn about today is that from what you've seen, the development in the 80s and 90s and what these guys are doing, it's no longer that place. And what all these guys are trying to do is try to attract talent and sell Indianapolis to the nation. So my first question, this is for everybody and just chime in, is how do we sell Indianapolis better to the nation?
Can I go ahead and start with that one? Obviously, the main thing when we're talking to businesses is they're looking at talent. So as we started looking at not just Indianapolis, but at the region, and if you draw a 60-mile radius from downtown, we have about 55,000 graduates per year. So that's a great talent pipeline. Purdue's doing a lot of things, with Rolls-Royce, with GE. So a lot of the engineering and the technical jobs that are being created, that talent is really within the region. And as long as they're able to tap into that and we're able to keep those individuals here, I've always said it's not that we don't educate, it's that we don't keep all the people that we educate as well. But having that talent and that talent recognizing that there are innovative businesses growing and locating here really helps us sell Indianapolis as well.
I'd tack on to that the fact that if you are talented or want to make an impact, this is a place to come to do that. So Indianapolis is incredibly engaging, as all of you know. You all reach out to your colleagues and help folks that are coming in town learn about Indianapolis and are very prideful about where we live and what we do here and the opportunities that exist. And for people that want to come here and be a producer and make an impact, they can do that. They can walk into Indianapolis and find a way to do that relatively easily, which is pretty incredible nationwide. There are not a lot of places around the country where you can walk into a city and say, I would like to do this, I want to make this happen, and have people enable that for you. So, and facilitate that process. And I think that's a testament to the people that are here and around the city, because we are so prideful, but we want to keep improving. And we want to beat the other metros that people continually tell us about, Charlotte, Nashville, Denver. We want to get there. We want to beat them. And the way to do that is to engage the most talented and thoughtful people to make that impact. And we're willing to do that here.
I think these guys, certainly on two sides here, are instrumental in spreading that message nationwide. But one of the things I see in traveling around the country and traveling around the world is sort of this presence and the brand. What is the brand? How do we develop the brand? And I think my opportunity today is kind of advocate what's our moonshot deal. In 1984, we went for the Pan Am Games, and we went through the whole sports development period. And now that Sherry Sywart's at Indy Downtown, I see our moonshot has to be housing, downtown housing. And it's interesting that we have representatives from Toronto here today. Toronto's a perfect example. Vancouver. I think that brand, whatever that moonshot thing is, to transform downtown with thousands of more units of housing of all kinds, I think is really critical for the next generation.
I think just to parlay on to Steve's point there, one of the things that is very important to make sure that we do develop neighborhoods and communities versus just creating density in the downtown is to provide opportunities for families, for all different income levels, not just apartments for transient people and students. We have to get people in the community that are actually invested in this community for the long haul, and part of that is an offering of housing that is diverse. So hopefully that happens.
So how do we use real estate as a mechanism to retrain, attract, and drive talent to Indianapolis?
I've got a project. I've got a moonshot.
That's your layup.
So, thank you. I mean, truly, when we think about how we grow the city of Indianapolis, we've had some incredible visionaries, and we have been blessed as a city in terms of our mayors and the civic leaders here to really think long-term about what we can do. You don't build a football stadium without a football team in too many places, and that certainly has made us Peyton's Place. So that, for better or worse, which was probably for the better for a period of time. But as we've been talking about, it's about talent. So talent is the economic driver of a city. And it creates opportunities, it creates innovation, it creates entrepreneurship. And many of you know that the driver economies in large part are small to mid-sized businesses. And while we may think we may attract the next Fortune 500 company here, we need to build it. We need to build a lot of them, and we need to build several that are on their way to that level of productivity for us. So when we take a look at the trends both in talent and jobs, our jobs are growing quite nicely here. And they're growing nicely across the advanced industries, those that require a greater level of STEM and put a greater amount of their capital in R&D. But we're actually not creating much collaboration across those industries, as much as we have a tremendous concentration of it here in Indianapolis and in central Indiana, more so actually than our competitive metros in large case. We do not create the innovation that you would see associated with that are the other places where there's close density and proximity of those companies to one another do see. So placemaking strategy around talent development, innovation, and entrepreneurship is a way to make that happen. So 16 Tech is that vision. And if you take a look at what we're trying to do with 16 Tech, we've got, as many of you know, this has been on the books for development for about 25, 30 years. We had a conversation actually with Representative Porter, and when he was at Christamore House, it was on a sub-region plan, which I have to imagine was probably sometime in the 80s. Goldsmith tried it. Peterson named it a certified tech park. There was a great move by Ballard several years ago to get the Busch Stadium lofts done, which I'm sure some folks here were involved in. But this needed a private sector anchor. It has needed someone to come in and commit their funds to say, this is going to be my home, and I'm going to create something around this. And we now have the Indiana Biosciences Research Institute that has said, I'm going to make this my home, and I'm going to roll companies out of what I'm doing. I'm going to create research for the life sciences industry, but this has to be bigger than life sciences. It has to be bigger than what we're trying to do with one research institute. So if you take a look at the 16 Tech plans, we're talking about over the course of 20 years, 5.5 million square feet of space, primarily focused on research and innovation of all advanced industries, creative industries, you name it. If you're an innovator, an entrepreneur, we'd love to see you there. And we want to create the mechanisms to do that. So at its heart, it's about talent development, retention, and attraction, and making us a global place for talent attraction. To get there, we need the real estate development to enable that. So we're in the process now of working with the city to enable the infrastructure. It's on top of a water company, so that makes it a bit challenging to grow vertically. So hopefully the city, call your city councilor, because we're in front of the council over the next 3 weeks and would love the $55.5 million needed to move the water company and some other things. But after that, if we get rolling like we think we can, and we've got tenants in place to do it, and we've got an institute that says we want to make it our home, we've got Cook Medical that's already there and willing to grow in that spot, we have a very, very good shot right now to be that moonshot to kick us into the next gear around talent and to make Indianapolis really well known as a global place of innovation, convergence, and collaboration. And that's what our intent is, and would love to hear ideas of other folks that want to help us collaborate and make that happen.
Well, I think the point, certainly innovation and technology, 16 Tech is critical. But if you look at the downtown, the regional center, as a sort of a real estate play, certainly it's a 12-cylinder engine or however many cylinders. There's a lot of cylinders in the engine that have to be working simultaneously. But from this group of people and working in real estate and all aspects is sort of the broadening of the vision of downtown from being the mile square. I want to replace that word. I want to take that off. I want to call it the 4-mile starfish or something. There's all of these tentacles that reach out. Like recently, Kinney Group, a software company, moved from Keystone Crossing out by Christamore House, and they're actively trying to attract more software companies. And that's not even a government incentive program. That's just software guys trying to come down and build on fiber. Those kind of things attract the innovators, the people that are the urban pioneers that are willing to go into the hard-hit neighborhoods and transform those neighborhoods. So I guess I'm going to start pushing for the 4-mile starfish instead of the mile square.
One of the things when we look at housing and the resurgence in housing downtown, a lot of it's been in the apartment, multifamily housing, but the neighborhood growth around the downtown is going to be key. We lose a lot of people when they get to the point of having families and they'll move out to the suburbs. Nothing wrong with that, but we need more diverse offerings here. When you look at Indianapolis and tax structures and the fact that income taxes go to where you live and not where you work, it becomes an important piece of Indianapolis having the revenue it needs to be able to continue to make improvements and invest in the infrastructure. So you start with the downtown, but it needs to now branch out. And there are neighborhoods where we've seen a lot of redevelopment, and that needs to be replicated in other neighborhoods in and around downtown, and that can continue to build out and then retain more of that talent as they go through different stages.
So a lot of, and I heard it on the conference call and I hear it up here, is that neighborhood feel. How do you keep people from going to suburbia and staying downtown? A lot of times they do when they have kids is because of that neighborhood, the yard. What are some things that we can do to create that neighborhood feel downtown?
Well, one of the things that we've been working on is the renovation at the Athenaeum, and they're under a fundraising effort right now if anybody wants to help them out. But one of the things that we're creating there is what we're calling the living room of Mass Ave, and it's a place where they'll have like a coffee space. They've partnered with a coffee company. They're going to bring seating to the actual street level and have that as a place where people can collaborate, have meetings, they can have their children come. It's really that gathering place for the community. And they're just one example of how to use a building that's been underutilized in a really innovative way to bring the community together. And I think there's a lot of other opportunities like that in some of the other developments that are happening. So
It's a challenge. There's not a silver bullet for it. Obviously, as you draw more jobs into the downtown area, people are generally going to want to live closer to where they work. And so as that continues to grow and you have a larger presence of professionals in this area, they're going to look at housing options and hopefully take on some projects, move into neighborhoods that are up and coming, renovate different homes, and that starts to have that ripple effect. But there's not just one thing you can do. You can't just go put in sidewalks and suddenly say, here, we've got a neighborhood for you. It's a lot of different areas, but again, one of it's just the capacity of individuals to have the finances to be able to invest in properties and then want to live close to where they work.
I'm going to build on that thought of capacity. A lot of it's also working with the neighborhoods themselves to figure out what they want to be to the extent they don't know. Many do. So it's finding those leaders within the neighborhoods who have the capability to influence and adding capacity to what they're doing, because a lot of the neighborhoods that have kind of formed themselves, they were there. They just needed leadership or some financial capability to enable what they were doing, to redo facades, to add some energy to the neighborhood and create meeting places and safe places where people wanted to be within the neighborhood and walkable environments. So there's been a tremendous trend to create walkable, dense villages around Indianapolis, and it's succeeding. And that's being noticed by the other neighborhoods who have been behind that trend and want to be a part of it and are struggling to figure out how to do it. So where there are incredible opportunities where vacant lots exist or rundown homes for possible investment, there are likely neighborhood leaders who want things to happen and are not as afraid of gentrification as you may think, but they do want to make sure they're protecting the residents there who have invested their time and effort to maintain the neighborhood to that point. So working with those folks to enable development, I think, can go a long way. It's time consuming and it requires effort, but it can be really rewarding and has been for several neighborhoods, I think, in Indianapolis that we've seen move up.
One of the things, having worked in community development, is the neighborhood organizations, the community development organizations, by nature are struggling every day to get funding for just to pay the phone bill. And I really think what we need to do to paint ourselves as Toronto or the next San Francisco, or San Francisco of the Midwest or whatever, is that moonshot is like, if we can put $1 billion together for a sports stadium, let's say we're going to take the next 10 years or 15 years, and we're going to put $1 billion into the Starfish and help connect the universities so that the cultural trail goes from Butler to IUPUI to University of Indianapolis, and make that leap that we can really be an international city that people say, that's like Barcelona, that's like Paris, we can do that. We've got great people. We've just got to get that vision.
So everything we're talking about is downtown, surrounding areas, but the gateway to our city, or the front door, I think as it was referred to, coming from the airport, is the I-70, West Street, and Meridian Street exits. What are the plans or what are the ideas to sprucing that up as people come into our city? The first thing they see isn't what they see now.
Well, that's obviously what we're working on, what we call the Stadium Village area. We recently hired Blue Marble to work on our master plan for that area. That's test. MJ's here. Where's MJ? Raise your hand. He's back in the back there. And we're working on development. I was talking to our Simon representative here a little bit ago. The first time we developed that master plan, maybe 10 years ago, we showed, with all this high visibility, we can do retail all along there. I went to Tom Schneider at Simon and said, what do you think about this? And he said, take all that retail out because until you have another 10,000, 15,000 rooftops there, you're not going to be able to support that retail. So it really made us change our whole perception. Unfortunately, the rental housing market has evolved, but that front door is critical. And I think with MJ and some of the people in the neighborhood we're gonna get a really neat plan developed.
A lot of you guys on the conference call talked about us being a river city, or talked about better utilizing the river. What do you mean?
Well, once Citizens gets the big dig down and the river is cleaned up, I think there's opportunity for that to be utilized differently. It's not going to be, big boats going down it by any means, but people that are utilizing it for recreational uses, paddle boarding, canoeing, things of that nature, having areas where people can access, that type of use is going to be key. But I think in order to get to that point, there's going to need to be confidence that the water quality is there, and then once the combined sewer overflow is finished, I think that will create the venue for that. But I'd also love to see a consistent river walk that connects from White River State Park and up north and hopefully towards 16 Tech, because I think that can create a real walkable area and will drive a lot more interest in utilizing the river itself.
All through the Riverside neighborhood, that White River State, from White River State Park all the way through. Technical challenges. There's great opportunity. So I think if we can do that, it just enhances our ability to attract talent, opportunity, and great opportunities for investment, housing along the river. I mean, it'd be amazing. So terrific opportunities for us.
One of the things about river development, I think, I was just in Denver last year, and there were people swimming in the river in downtown Denver. I mean, it blows your mind. It's like, people swimming in the river in downtown, what on earth is going on here? But you start looking around, and some of the things about the policies of riverfront development, and I'm going to say part of the lost opportunity at IUPUI is being able to push buildings right up to the river. He's got your mic there. Like in Denver, you see condos right on the edge of the river. I mean, and it's really important to not just say we're going to develop trails on the river. We have to encourage, like even at the stamping plant, push buildings up to the edge of the river so people walk out the door and they're at the water. That's a really critical part of riverfront development, is those policies.
Hopefully, we've learned some lessons from the canal and how that was utilized. I think there were some missed opportunities there as far as getting that developed. And just now with restaurants starting to come up there, I know that it was attempted at many times in the past, but I think if we can develop that in a way that allows mixed use and we're smart about it, then it'll be really successful. So.
Are there concerns over some of the, from a long-term standpoint, over some of the new architectural designs of the buildings that are going up downtown?
Yes.
I would personally like to see more density, getting beyond the 5-story wood frame structures and start creating greater density in those spaces. At some point in time, we'll run out of surface lots in those prime development locations, and I hope we start to push the envelope a little bit. Now, Flaherty and Collins is doing that on the Market site, but I'd like to see more of that. Now, I think that'll be a great test case to see, one, how that develops, two, if they're able to get the rents they need to support that level of investment. But once you start to see that happen, I think that can have an opportunity for others to look at that and say, yeah, that works, and we want to make that level of investment as well.
Yeah, I think people are looking for more innovation and less elaboration as far as how we're building. I think they're hungry for buildings that are world class. So we're saying we're a world class city, we're saying we're headed in that direction, but the buildings that we're currently building definitely do not speak to that. So it'd be great to see folks push the envelope more, and if developers will allow that to happen. So spaces that don't totally take up the whole entire block, but they come in and out, and there's green space, and there's places to rest, and places to eat, and places to live, and it feels like a walkable city. There's some efforts towards that, but there's a lot of just maximizing the lot and not creating buildings that actually will bring people here to look at. Columbus, Indiana has done a great job at that, and most world-class cities have. It's just we need to be cognizant of what we're building and the impact it will have, not just to our bottom line, but really to the future of Indianapolis and its longevity.
Thank you. And I failed moderator rule number 1. I asked a close-ended question, so I appreciate you elaborating. We've got some time for some questions, if anybody has any.
Mike Tierman of Ice Miller, thank you for putting this on. It's been very interesting. What role, so we've talked a lot about density in the downtown area and getting more people down here. I see a critical part of that as being public transportation and that infrastructure. How do you see that expanding Indianapolis's access to public transit as part of this plan to improve the downtown area?
I think the plan for transit improvements isn't just about the downtown, it's about workforce mobility across the entire region. But when you have good transit and people are able to get where they need to be from any location, that can draw more people to downtown. It's been said many times, you can take public transportation to a Pacers game, but you need to figure out another way to get home. If we have a way that people are confident, it's reliable, and something that they can utilize on a regular basis, I think then that has a positive impact downtown, but also more broadly as well, since it's looking at a much larger tract.
Part of the problem with mass transit is the people who are driving highway decisions are largely the logistics industry. I'm on a statewide council with Connexus, and it's interesting. They at the start of the meeting, they see me coming and they say, "We're not going to talk about mass transit." And so part of the problem is all the infrastructure money goes to adding lanes. So if we keep adding lanes to suburban interstates and facilitating more and more pavement, we're inherently doing the opposite of what mass transit needs to do. So all the money we're doing to spend on adding lanes and adding lanes and adding lanes needs to be redirected or partially redirected to mass transit.
think there's a natural,
Who's that back there?
Oh.
Yeah, we got some advocates back there, yeah.
I think it's naturally going that direction anyway, because as folks are building buildings, there's almost no thought to parking. Everyone's sort of accounting for the people that are in their building, whether it be the restaurants or the residents themselves, but they're not accounting for the workforce. The people that work downtown, and as someone who has a company downtown, it's very hard to find parking. So your only choice is mass transit. So in a lot of ways, we're sort of forcing the issue with the way that we're constructing these properties.
And, well, fortunately, I mean, I think the paradigm shift and the unique opportunity with the electric cars, I mean, we may be in this bizarre kind of time shift where we didn't build a mass transit system in Indianapolis, and driverless cars are on the horizon. And and miraculously, we didn't spend billions of dollars on mass transit, and now driverless cars and electric cars are going to be everywhere, and maybe that'll solve our mass transit problem. But that's coming from private sector, not from the mass transit people.
Alan Galloway, Boyle Construction. I think a lot of people in the construction and design development are really complaining about the city and the length of time it takes to get a permit. Seems like it's getting a little out of control. Can you elaborate on maybe talking to some of the public officials and coming up with some ways to ease up or streamline or make it a little simpler,
Yeah, I'd like to address that one. The Indy Chamber, through Develop Indy, has a person on staff who's here, Jim Rollinson. He's specifically a permitting and regulatory ombudsman, there to help businesses, contractors expedite the permitting process, make sure that there's a single point of contact. There was also Open Counter, which was, is it Open Counter? Yeah, okay. I sometimes get that confused with Open Table. But Open Counter is a website that was launched, and it basically enables individuals to go in and understand what are the zoning requirements for a specific location, what's the timetable to get a variance if that's what's needed, and what are the expected costs to help individuals understand. I'd like to say you can be sitting at home at 12 a.m. and get on this site and get an understanding of what is entailed in terms of getting that permit, and that helps you expedite the entire process, but also puts you in touch with Jim to have a central point of contact to help move through that process as quickly as possible.
I'm David Johnson. I'm with Simon Property Group as a regional vice president. I've been with Simon about 25 years. So when I first started back in 1990, there we go, coming to Indianapolis, I remember all the holes in the ground. How many remember all those holes in the ground? So it's absolutely amazing when you think about the last 25 years what's happened downtown. And Steve, you're amazing. You talk about moonshots and starfish, and it's so exciting. And swimming in the river in Denver, they probably have Coors in that river. But I'm pleased to be here, and sure we'll probably have a couple of questions on Circle Center today.
Bill Benner, Senior Vice President for Corporate Community and Public Relations for Pacers Sports and Entertainment. My long background is that I was a sports writer and a sports columnist for the Indianapolis Star for 33 years, and then I've moved into the other side of life, working for the Sports Corporation, Visit Indy, and now with Pacers Sports and Entertainment. We've had our moonshot. Our moonshot was sports, the sports initiative. Those visionaries that were referred to earlier used sports to elevate Indianapolis's national and international identity, made significant infrastructure investments, including not $1 billion, but $720 million toward Lucas Oil Stadium. And Bankers Life Fieldhouse, I'm here today to also reference, and I brought a couple of renderings, the new St. Vincent Center that will continue the expansion and the kind of the filling in of the southeast quadrant of downtown. We used to think of Lilly as being way out there somewhere. Lilly is now part of downtown, linked with Fletcher Place, Virginia Avenue, the Cultural Trail, St. Vincent Center, which will come on board in 2017. And really the first part of that was Bankers Life Fieldhouse, Conseco Fieldhouse in the southeast quadrant. And I also will talk about the fact that Market Square Arena was the initial catalyst for downtown development and getting people to stay downtown after 5 o'clock.
Good morning. My name is Adam Collins. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development on behalf of Mayor Greg Ballard. We've got about, I think, 72 days left in the Ballard administration, which, for some may be an exciting thing. For us, it's kind of, sad that we're coming to an end, but it's exciting to have the opportunity to come here and talk to you today about really what I think the mayor has done over the last 6 years, where we've been intentional, where we've been successful, and then what we think the opportunities are over the next couple of years. But as always tends to happen on these panels, the good questions that I can answer come in the first one. So my background, I've been with the mayor for 7 years in a variety of different roles. I've had 5 jobs in 7 years, but I actually started in legal and then on the regulatory side, on the permitting end. So if anyone has questions about permitting processes, how we can improve them, hit me up after, because I can tell you from a city's perspective, we're trying to strike that fine balance between encouraging development and making sure that folks are safe. And so one of the things that's always been tough, I think, is to figure out how do we serve our customer in the best way. It's something the mayor's continued to work on over the last few years, but always interested in trying to find ways on how we can improve those processes.
Good morning. My name is David Durham. I'm a partner with Barnes & Thornburg. Been practicing for 17 years, sometime with Baker & Daniels, 7 years with Duke Realty doing medical office development, and now 3 years with Barnes. As many of you know, and we host a lot of these events at our office, the partnership does own our building, and so we obviously have a significant investment in downtown Indianapolis, and obviously are beneficiaries of bringing as much talent as we can down here. Well, it seems impossible that it was 2012 when we had the Super Bowl here, and the weather gods decided to grant us a gift of 60-degree days. And in February, I do talk to people, and the people who had a chance to come here from all around the country, and they talk about the village environment of Indianapolis, the walkability of it, how for those who had been in Dallas the year before in the ice storm, how unworkable it was as a place to host a major event. And then I look over the last few years as we've watched the Big Ten tournament, the football event that comes here, and the crowds and the sellouts, and just what an amazing experience it is to be downtown. That obviously doesn't happen overnight, and it starts with a vision. And often that vision really comes with the cooperation and efforts and money from the city. Adam, could you talk just a little bit? I know you mentioned it with Mayor Ballard, but it even goes back a little further than that. But really, where they were 8 or 10 years ago, the vision, and then what you've seen that play out as successes.
Sure, and I equate this to a lot of what we see today. So, I'm always amazed when you look at the construction that's going on someplace like Market Square Arena. It feels like it takes them forever to get out of the ground, right? The foundation work takes forever, and then as soon as they're above ground, it sprouts up so fast you can hardly believe it. And I think that's a good metaphor for really where we've been at in the last 8 years relative to Indianapolis. We really have 40 years worth of strong development history that created a foundation. When you look at the combination of the sports strategies, what we did to focus on the downtown with our corporate community, that was really a foundation. I think here in this administration, we can't take credit for really, doing anything but benefiting on the work that Mayors Peterson, Goldsmith, Hudnut, and Lugar put in. So we've had the opportunity to really, go and take advantage of that, and you've seen that in terms of the development that's springing up, as Brian talked about, on the surface parking lots that we have. In terms of the mayor's kind of strategy and how he focused on downtown, though, I think looking back, there are really 2 things that kind of came together for us to develop our strategy. One is, as you heard Betsy talk about, the desire for talent attraction. So anyone who sits in my chair in this administration or another one, the number one thing they're going to hear every day from employers is that we have to find a way to attract and retain talent. And so that's, the most critical issue, especially as you look at the fact that, competition is really becoming global. It's not about Indianapolis competing against Louisville, Cincinnati, et cetera. It's about competing with Chicago, Nashville, Austin. I mean, those are the kind of communities that we look at job prospects that are our competitors. So you have this increasingly or this increasing need to attract talent in your city. At the same time, as the mayor came in office, we had property tax caps, which hit city revenues extremely hard. So you had to go from a reliance on property tax revenues to find a way to increase your income tax revenues. And for those of you who have heard the strategy that the mayor put out around Live Indy, it's 50,000 people making $50,000 a year that are needed to plug our revenue gaps. So what I think you saw starting in 2008 was really an intentional strategy aimed at finding places, an urban dense environment in neighborhoods, including downtown, where people would want to live, where companies could attract talent. And so over the last 7 years, what you've seen from the mayor's administration is probably $600 million in direct investment that was leveraged using about $100 million in private funds. And historically, if you go back and look over the last probably 25 years, the city's seen a number of investment from $9 to $12 of direct and indirect investment for every dollar we put in public subsidy. So we have about $600 million worth of direct investment that's happened today. We expect those numbers to continue to grow as we go forward over the next few years. And so that strategy and those investment really played out in a handful of projects that I think hopefully everyone in this room is really familiar with, but Cityway, the Mass Ave Fire Station, Axis, a combination of mixed use, whether it's residential, retail, hotel components, that all came together and again have been really successful in bringing folks downtown. If you look from just a statistical perspective, I always ask Sherry, because for those of you that don't know, she has the best data on this. We're going to double roughly our downtown our number of downtown residents over the course of this decade. And so, again, we've been able to grow increasingly, and at the same time, we're doing it with absorption rates that are high and rents that continue to go up. So we have a really, really strong market. I think the other thing that's been important for us is that you look at the people who come in, roughly 60% of those people who move into these developments are coming from out of town and at an average income per household of $90,000. So again, it's helping us plug those revenue gaps. And so I think that's really been the kind of history of the strategy of where we came from, why we made those decisions. And as we look forward, there are still a couple areas where I think we're focused as a city trying to create nodes where you can connect downtown to the neighborhoods. A lot of people talked about the neighborhoods in the earlier panel. They're incredibly important. But what I think you've seen from the mayor is a focus on we have to double down and make targeted investments in places where we're going to see a return. And so we really, when you look at the south, the east, and the northwest side, we're really starting to see downtown bleed into the neighborhoods, which is an incredibly, I think, exciting time for all of us.
I'll tell you, when I walk out of my office and I either walk over up Mass Avenue and continue to watch the growth and development, or I head up towards Fountain Square and see the mill houses of the world and others who continue to grow and develop the retail through those corridors. David, if you could just talk a little bit about, really the evolution of Circle Center. I can remember many years ago coming down and it being kind of the hub of retail. It was if you wanted retail, you went to Circle Center downtown. And maybe just talk about that evolution and how it's been challenging because of the expansion and other retail opportunities, and also what it means to have these additional rooftops downtown and the impact on Circle Center.
Well, as I mentioned, you think about Circle Center and its evolution. It's unprecedented that the city of Indianapolis, 19 other corporations come together way back, a 15-year plan to build the center, which opened, I think it was September 8th of 1995. And you look at that point in time to today, I think your word evolution is exactly right. It's evolved. It's still dynamic, it's still strong, but as real estate professionals, we always look at what is the highest and best use for any given asset or any given space. And we always lease to demand. No matter what business you're in, you look at the highest and best use and you lease to demand. And as we look at today, I really think what you're seeing is a mixed use project. And that's a good thing. Indy Star went in where Nordstrom is, a good thing. You're seeing a lot more restaurants coming in. We just did a deal with Yard House that opened. We've got a deal with Nada, a Mexican restaurant. I know it's been widely reported, not confirmed, that Punch Bowl Social is coming to Indianapolis. You can read the CEO's comments and decide for yourself, but you know, there's a lot going on. The amazing thing is when you think about the center today versus where it was in 1995, there's only about 10% of the tenants that are there today, but yet the center consistently remains around 90% occupied. So, you know, it's an evolution, and I think that's the message as real estate professionals. We want to continue to look at our assets, evolve our assets, lease to demand, and as I look at the future Circle, it could include residential, it could include more office, it could include more, you know, entertainment and retail, and definitely restaurants. That seems to be where it is right now. And to the first panel with the residential development downtown, absolutely critical. Right now, I'd say, you know, 50% or maybe even a little more of our business is based on convention traffic. We have a vibrant convention business here in town. When Lucas Oil got built, I know a lot of people thought, why are we building that? I looked at it more of, my God, you get to expand the convention center. And the convention center really drove more business, more opportunity for everybody in the town. And so as we get more of that convention business that's vibrant, we get more rooftops downtown with residential. It all bodes well for the future.
Speaking of sports, I do talk to people about how much fun it is being downtown on Thursdays and Fridays during the week, and how the town seems to swell in size, or I'll walk down and grab a sandwich and be standing on the corner and feel incredibly short as there's nothing but, you know, 6-foot-tall girls who are standing on every corner with matching outfits. I'm like, oh, it's a volleyball tournament. Okay, I get it. But Bill, could you talk a little bit about just the impact of sports downtown, the impact of the Pacers? Obviously, you've got an exciting new development that I think we'd like to hear a little bit more about with St. Vincent as well. But can you just talk really about the last few years and really where you've seen the direction go, and then the impact on the Pacers?
Well, again, I just want to emphasize that, and going back to Market Square Arena, because I am an old guy, and I actually, as a beat writer for the Indiana Pacers in 1974, covered the first games at Market Square Arena. But I cannot imagine how Indianapolis, I think we would have gotten where we are today. We just wouldn't have gotten here this quickly without the impact of sports. David and I both have the great fortune to work for the Simons, and their impact on this city. They sustained the Pacers. I don't think if the Pacers had gone away, which was a very real possibility in 1979, 1980, that I think that would have really hindered any possibility of building a football stadium without a team to play in it, if we would have lost the Pacers. And so the Simons stepped in. The investment in Circle Center Mall, as David said, an incredible asset to our city that really spurred the next phase of our downtown development. We mentioned, the first panel mentioned, the Big Ten football championship, the Big Ten tournaments, all those bringing regional audiences here from around the Big Ten. Hopefully they're bringing highly educated people who own businesses who come to Indianapolis and say, dang, that's a place I might want to bring my business. Or also students who would come here. We're talking about attracting the millennials who might come here to watch their team play and go, that is a really cool downtown. That's a place I might want to live someday. So I think sports, again, I'm not discounting everything else. I just think it's always good to be reminded that sports was the initial investment, and the visionaries had this idea of turning Indianapolis into the amateur sports capital of the world. They did. We've kind of moved away from amateur sports, but we're certainly heavily involved. You know, the attraction of the NCAA, USA Football, the national governing bodies that are here. It's beyond anybody's imagination how it all played out. And again, the Pacers have been the constant. The Pacers were our true first major league team. Again, I go back to Market Square Arena, but then the building of Conseco, now Bankers Life Fieldhouse, that huge connection to the southeast quadrant, which now includes Cityway, Lilly, and as I alluded to earlier, Fountain Square, Fletcher Place, everything that's happening in that quadrant of downtown. And finally, when we're talking about attracting that next group, they want these kinds of amenities. They want NFL. They want the NBA. They want to have those kinds of attractions. And as sports came downtown, we were also brought our arts and culture community along with it. The zoo moved downtown. The symphony moved from Clues Hall over to the Circle. And so it hasn't been just sports, but sports was the catalyst for all these things that have come along. And I think the challenge now is maintaining, moving forward. You know, we've lost, we had a great ice facility at Pan Am Plaza, gone. We had a fantastic tennis facility over near IUPUI, gone. And so, you know, we've lost some things, but at the same time, we have to maintain those investments. And I understand the debate when people talk about, you know, $1 billion for a football stadium. Well, it's more than that. Or the talk, you know, the Pacers Sports and Entertainment just reached a deal a year and a half ago with the CIB to maintain and upgrade Bankers Life Fieldhouse. And part and parcel of that is now Herb Simon is privately funding the St. Vincent Center, but that will allow offices and the training and the practice court for the Pacers will move over into that new facility, and that will allow us to repurpose Bankers Life Fieldhouse and make it even more of a public building than it is currently. So people don't sometimes don't understand. Bankers Life Fieldhouse is the most widely used public building in the state of Indiana, with about 3 million people coming through that building over the course of the year. And the demand for the space, where it's the current practice court or any of the other public spaces we have, Pacers Square, the restaurants, and of course the seating area itself is extraordinary. So we, as St. Vincent Center comes on board and we are able to move a lot of our offices over there, Bankers Life, we'll be able to repurpose a lot of that space and make it even more of a public building than it currently is.
For many of you who may have attended the student housing panels that we had a couple of months ago, which was really well attended, I think, Adam, if you could just talk a little bit about, I have the privilege of representing Flaherty and Collins, and they've got the great Axis project over on the west side, and they've put Marsh in there, but can you talk about how the city is working with some of these private developers to figure out ways where they can contribute even a relatively small amount compared to the investment from the private developers, but where it really makes the project possible, where without your involvement it wouldn't be?
Yeah, so I think overall, we're in a little bit of a conundrum. I think, you know, typically when we look at investing, I mean, we try to make larger investments rather than a series of small ones. And so we try to find ways to kind of focus on larger transformative projects, which I would argue, you know, the MSA project, the residential 25-story residential tower that's going to go on there with the Whole Foods on the east side is a good one. You know, the east, I've been told by Dave Flaherty that the east and west sides of downtown are very different markets, and you know that appears to be true to us, I think, as well. So we've been lucky in terms of how the western market is really, or the western half of downtown has really benefited from IUPUI. So if you look at the development that's gone in there, Trinitas, Buckingham have both done student housing developments that didn't require anything from the city. We've also got one on the canal in a first phase that didn't require anything from the city. Now, it's an interesting opportunity, and hopefully I'm probably oversharing here, but we have a potential to do a student housing development on the canal that has a retail component. We're trying to find a way to incentivize that, so we can, you know, per what the earlier panel said, try to find a way to create that density and that mixed use feeling on the canal. But I think in terms of projects, you know, student housing, I've been amazed. If there are any student housing developers in here, you guys are doing the best job at collecting per square foot rents I think I've seen. I mean, I had a guy come in and talk about a project that was going to be across the river on the west side of campus that he was getting the equivalent of $2.25 a square foot for. So, I mean, it was a pretty dynamic pricing structure that they have. So that seems like a real advantage they have. And to date, they haven't needed much assistance from us. But looking forward at what the next administration will do, I think, or could do, I think the same number of tools are going to be available there. The tax increment financing districts, the state legislature, parts of the state legislature try to take a swing at those every year. I can tell you the downtown TIF is the most important thing to downtown Indianapolis's economic growth. Having access to that capital on an annual basis to continue to make investments is something that we must have and continue to have going forward. But I think in addition to that, we're going to have to be a little bit more creative relative to some of our infrastructure funds. Rebuild and put streets and sidewalks in a variety of different neighborhoods, repaired bridges all over town. It also did a lot of infrastructure work downtown. And so, that's a way that we were able to contribute to project where we didn't have to put a direct cash investment. And then I think going forward, tax abatements will continue to be useful as well. People are going to have to focus on those, try to find a way to monetize them. But, those are typically the ways that we contribute overall. And I can talk about a couple projects that we have left. Our big final push on the multifamily mixed use is with Scott Travis in Buckingham, Cityway Phase 2. It's going to be a $115 million project, a city subsidy of about $15 million, and that's going to create fill-in parking lots on Virginia and Delaware and build a 9-story tower on top of one of the existing parking garages. So those are the kind of investments that we're going to make. I think the question will be for the next administration, where are we at on the multifamily market? Where are the areas that we should really look to transition? And how do we find a way to put money in those deals that really makes a lot of sense?
By the way, I'm proud to say that my millennial daughter is the property manager at Cityway. So,
David, there's been some recent press about Simon's renewed investment in Circle Center. Can you talk just a little bit about that or some of the upcoming plans?
Sure, Adam. No. See, the city owns part of it, so I'm hoping here, but
the non-profitable part.
Yeah. Yes, it has been widely reported that we've put together a plan. Circle Center over the last 20 years has seen millions and millions of people walk through it. Obviously, it's getting a little rough. You go in some of the entrances and the restrooms and the food court. And we do have a plan that we're putting together. And, of course, the Circle Center Development Corporation, which is made up of 19 corporations, has to, review that plan. The city is an owner of the land and the building. They have to review it. So we are planning it, but the main focus of that renovation, as I said, you have all this convention traffic coming downtown. As they walk around downtown, you may not even know there's a mall there. And of course, Georgia Street has become very vibrant. We see a lot of more activity on Georgia Street. So we definitely want to kind of turn the mall to an out-facing component. Really look at all our entrances and how can we bring more of a retail presence, at least even if an image from an entrance, every entrance, Washington Street entrance, Maryland Street entrance, but most importantly, we also want to open up an entrance on Georgia Street. We have another plan that also opens it up on Meridian, so we'd have have an entrance on both of that. We definitely want to take care of the inside of the mall as well. New seating, new food court, new restrooms, LED lighting, Wi-Fi stations, really kind of connect with that downtown customer that's now moving into downtown and try to do more things to attract them as well. So it's an ambitious plan. The $20 million that's been reported is just really more of a renovation. There's other expansion plans that could be down the road, as I mentioned, as we continue to evolve. We look at more street-facing retail, and so it's a plan that's out there, and we hope to get approval and move forward.
I'm guilty of going out and getting in the south end of the mall and sneaking out through Harry and Izzy's without buying anything there. So just to get out of Georgia Street.
And if I can add, I think touch on a thing that both these gentlemen just mentioned. I think it's really, really important. As a city, sometimes it's easy to take for granted what's made you successful. And we go back and we look at the mall and we look at Circle Center, we look at sports and those different functions. You made great points about the things that we've lost. And the natatorium was one of those that almost happened again, and it was one that the city tried to find a way to help keep here. But I think it's going to be very, very important for us over that next period of years, as these gentlemen said, and for the next administration to focus on how do we find a way to not ignore those things that have made us successful, recognize how significant a part of our brand they really are, and make sure they have the opportunity to continue and grow in this kind of new fabric that we're weaving of Indianapolis's downtown.
As I travel all over, my region is pretty much from here east, and it's simply amazing when I think about Indianapolis compared to other cities I go to, in that when you think about the convention traffic, you think about everything that's going on and how it's changed over the last 20 years. You don't find that anywhere else. It's truly a model that other cities cannot replicate. And if you're bringing a meeting, and we bring a lot of big meetings here ourselves for our annual meetings, you get all your attendees downtown, you're set. From the airport down here, you can't find that anywhere else, and that's a huge, huge advantage.
And the NCAA is a great example of that. The NCAA, in fact, as part of their agreement when they moved to the city, they agreed we will have a men's Final Four here every 5 years. We'll have a women's Final Four here every 5 years. We'll have our annual convention, and then all the meetings that they bring in with the administrators from throughout the country to come here and experience Indianapolis. That's an incredible advantage that we have invested in. Again, the investment in the NCAA headquarters to attract them and bring them to White River State Park. And so we can't take those kinds of things for granted and just assume that it was just magically happened. It was strategic. It required investment, and it will continue to pay off for many years to come. It's truly extraordinary. Again, how it has all played out. Not just Lucas Oil Stadium or Bankers Life Fieldhouse or Victory Field, which is the nation's finest minor league ballpark, but everything that has happened with the sports industry around it. The American College of Sports Medicine, I mentioned the national governing bodies that are here, and all those are driving traffic and residents into downtown Indianapolis. Back in the back, yeah.
So there's two issues. One is, and Sherry just walked out the door, panhandling, right, which is really a part of that. And that's something that IDI and the mayor's office has worked on. We thought we had a solution. Our friends in the legislative body decided not to act on it. I think there's some concern from a civil liberties perspective on what can happen. At the end of the day, it's a thorny issue. Everybody knows it. But if you want your downtown to be successful, you have to create kind of a warm, welcoming, inviting environment. So I'm actually on Sherry's board with Downtown Indy. I know that continues to be a topic. So I think the next piece would be to try to find a way, how do we put that solution in place, get it in there. Hopefully once we get past November, get into January and the political winds have kind of changed, we can get back to the rational operation of government or management of government and put something in place that'll help everyone. But I can tell you from, of course, she left it that, as we walked out as we're having here, but that's the number one issue that I hear from folks in downtown Indy. And we think we have a solution. We think it's not perfect, but it's legal. But we can find a way to make that happen. Now, that's on the enforcement end. The other bigger thing, not to go too deep into this, but we have major mental health issues in Marion County that have to be addressed. It's not just us, it's every major metro across the country.
Yes.
The sheriff is the largest mental health provider in Marion County. So that's a scary thought. So, I think going forward as we're looking at criminal justice, some of those other things, we're going to have to continue to find a way to address the services and make that a bigger component. And the reason it's tough is because we have declining budgets across the board. But I think that's really the only way, until we address the kind of mental health issues, especially from a criminal justice perspective, we're going to have some continuing problems there.
Right here. Yeah.
Leo Sims, West Brad. The freight train that touched the city in half. What is your thoughts, vision, timing of that? It really does cut the city in half.
That's a great question, and that is one of the tremendous opportunities that the city has, over the coming, I would say, decade. If you ever want to get CSX attention, threaten to shut down that rail line. That's the busiest east-west rail line in the United States. And so we had some issues during the Super Bowl. We had to shut it down. We managed to get a lot of really great response in the short term. The problem is not only does it cut downtown in half, but it looks awful, right? If you go that intersection, we can't make College two-way because the bridge that goes Washington and College, the structure underneath is not wide enough to make that happen. So CSX is not a great maintainer. Hopefully they are here, but they're not a great maintainer of physical assets. So overall, we would like to move them to the Beltway. There's been a plan, a study done that would move that CSX line to what we call the Beltway. The problem is the improvements required in order to make that track, the track's infrastructure solid enough to withstand the traffic they have. So, originally we were told that number was about $75 million. I met with them probably about a year and a half ago. I was told that number was closer to $400 million and could be, $600-700 million. So there's tremendous opportunity there, I think, to find a way to move that around. But the capital cost right now is really the big thing that is holding us back. I think there's potential. Lilly wants it out. There are a number of entities that want to see it gone. But we're going to have to find a way to be creative about revenue and financing and governments to create the opportunity to move them out of the downtown area.
Yes.
I'm digressing. It's Krista Calderon, Summit Realty Group. I'm digressing back to the comment about the REITs closing at Pan Am Plaza. Ideally, what do you want to see happen there? Is there plans for development with the changing of Circle Center Mall?
I personally would love to see some kind of combo hotel residential retail space go into Pan Am Plaza. Pan Am Plaza, for those of you who haven't been here for a long time, was built in conjunction with the Pan Am Games. Lilly Endowment invested so they could, that would be the headquarters for a number of the national sports governing bodies that were located here. Most of those have now moved out and into other space. The plaza itself is a great, I believe, it's a great public space, but it's woefully underutilized, especially with its proximity to the Omni, to Circle Center, to Lucas Oil, to the Convention Center. So I would love to see development in that space. It's currently owned by Kite. Yeah, Kite Realty has the space, and there's long been rumblings about hotel residential in there.
And I'll add a very micro kind of comment on there, which is a ballroom is really what Visit Indy will tell you is what's needed. We need another large ballroom. One more large ballroom allows us to attract 2 large conventions at the same time, which basically doubles the number of events we can have in a year. I think it adds something like 5,000 possible attendees per event that we could have at a time. So it's a really significant piece of infrastructure that'll allow us to better leverage the convention center. And so Visit Indy's been very vocal that if something happens there, they'd love to have a ballroom, which fits in with what Bill's talking about, because of the fact that'd be the last place where you could really connect to the convention center. So, for us, I think from an economic perspective, we want to see something that generates taxes, but something that's kind of a force multiplier in a ballroom has the potential to be that kind of product.
I'll tell you one additional thing we're kind of looking at. which it could be, dovetail with any kind of a development on there. But, Indianapolis and the donut counties, everything, there are so many great local entrepreneurs that when you think about all the convention traffic, all the new residential traffic, what a great way to highlight their product by bringing it downtown. So whether it's at Circle Center and we take an area of the mall and really devote it to Indianapolis local entrepreneurs that want to sell their products, open stores, get some type of a preferred rate by working with the city and with us, would be just a great opportunity. And I think that's prime for that kind of development as well.
Back in the back.
So the Red Line project, the Red Line's part of the city's regional cities application. Another thing, if you're calling your state legislator about anything else or the governor's office, you may want to advocate for Central Indiana as a part of that project. But in terms of planning, you've got the wrong guy here. I've always done the right thing in delegated planning because I don't know that I've ever really understood it. But my understanding is Rezone Indy is started to cover that and has the TOD kind of standards included as part of that. So they've started to think about transit-oriented development and zoning standards and how that goes along with the Red Line. But I think as we look at the Red Line's still a few years off. We've got to get the federal funds. The city has to match. We have to finish the planning before we can actually get it started. I think we'll have plenty of time to put those policies in place. But our planning department really has already started that activity, and I think it's just going to continue over the next few years.
I'm on the board of trustees for the Children's Museum, and we just had a meeting recently regarding, because there are some federal funds available through that corridor, especially for not-for-profits like the Children's Museum, to have exits and a ramp so that you wouldn't have to cross the intersection. So there's a lot of interesting considerations being made. I don't know how much you've read about the Red Line, but it's basically going to be a reverse traffic. So as it comes up out of downtown, it'll literally take up that center lane of Meridian, which is a little hard to think about when you think about having 4 cars wide abreast there even today. It's a little challenging, but it'll really, there's a lot of significant development challenges right now just with what exists, but I think there are some interesting opportunities if that Red Line does come to pass and you see some infill opportunities between downtown and 56th Street.
And if I can, I've got one thing I need to plug, if I can take just a second. One of the things everybody talked about was neighborhoods, single-family residential. Our focus has been the next administration is really going to have to focus on creating that single-family residential supply, especially in areas near around downtown. We just don't have the capacity. One of the things the city's done in partnership with Downtown Indy and the Builders Association is create an event that mirrors the Homerama that they just had in the suburbs. So it actually starts today. It's called Indyrama. For $15, I think, you buy a ticket. There's a shuttle. It runs you through 5 different homes in the Holy Cross, Old North Side, Fall Creek Place, Heron Morton, and Chatham Arch neighborhoods. And it's an opportunity to go look in at spec homes and really what the top end of the market is downtown. So it starts today. Tickets are available. I'd encourage everybody to go take a look, because if you haven't seen the work that the redevelopment group, Millhouse, ZMC, and these guys are doing downtown, it's really incredible stuff. So that's going to go on, I think, for 2 weekends, Thursday through Sunday, this weekend and next. So if you have the opportunity, I'd highly recommend you get out there and take a look.